In today's episode, you're going to learn about some of the largest obstacles to agency growth, to business growth, to growth in your personal life, and some of the strategies that we've used to overcome them. Hit the subscribe button, follow our channel for more secrets, techniques, strategies, and just very open, heart-to-heart conversations about growing a digital marketing agency and growing your own personal career. Don't forget to check out Join or Die, Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation, a masterclass of successful digital advertising strategies written by Patrick Gilbert, Adventure Media COO, and forwarded by yours truly. Check it out on Amazon.com in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and soon to be audiobook. I am Isaac Rudansky, founder and CEO of Adventure Media. I'm joined, as I usually am, by Patrick Gilbert, Adventure Media COO. Patrick recently published a book, Join or Die, Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation. We're going to talk a little bit about the book today. Most importantly, we're going to talk about the last chapter.
The entire book of Join or Die is our own opinion on this idea that people have become too comfortable with the status quo. People have been pushing back against changes in technology with machine learning and automation in particular. And not enough people have been willing to go out there and build their own solutions that can leverage this technology to drive better performance for their clients.
Andreessen talks about healthcare technology when he references smug complacency. You make an extension. You say that it exists. That smug complacency exists in our industry also, in advertising, in agencies, marketing, maybe more broadly speaking. What do you mean? Where do you where really pinpoint where you feel complacency is hampering progress the most, or the most noticeably?
So I think from the top down, it's not just a marketing problem. It comes down from all facets of any larger organization with influence. The reason that innovation generally comes from like small, scrappy companies is because they're the only ones that are motivated to do so, because that's their only way to exist. That's why, I don't know what the example might be. Take Uber, for example. Uber was a small, scrappy startup that disrupted a very lazy industry of transportation that was not delivering a good customer experience. They were not optimizing for modern technology. Just everything about it was just ripe for disruption. They should have optimized themselves, but they weren't motivated to. And I think the reason for that isn't because there's not smart people working at these larger companies. I guess the taxi industry is probably a bad example, but if you take another company that went out of business, maybe Blockbuster being replaced by Netflix, or even a larger incumbent that's going to be challenged by an up-and-coming startup, any company you want to look at, it's not because there's not smart people working in these large companies. It's because that those individuals are not put in a place where they're incentivized to make risky decisions that actually drive innovation. People are happy with the status quo because that's how they earn a paycheck and that's how they go home to their families at the end of the day. And we see it all the time. We work with a lot of larger clients, and this certainly isn't the case across the board, but there are certainly people who their motivation goes from 9 to 5 and then it's over with. And ultimately they care more about their own career than the success of the company or the industry they work in. Now you multiply that by hundreds of thousands of people that work in a given industry, and you just have no absolute progress. At the marketing and advertising level, I think we've most seen it in terms of people not really caring about driving profit and performance for clients. And this is where my book, Join or Die, comes in. Because over the last maybe 15 to 20 years, advertising got absolutely off the rails and became out of hand, where nobody was held accountable to actually drive performance. They were measuring performance based off of things like impression count, click count, and overall spend. That was loosely correlated to overall revenue that was generated by a given brand. Then you had this instance that took over where people were doing backroom deals and click fraud was becoming a thing for no other reason than to inflate these artificial numbers to begin with. So people were more incentivized to inflate numbers that weren't even tied to performance to begin with than to try and figure out a new model to actually drive profit and to sell products and services. And that is a huge issue. So you compound that over the course of 15 years, and you get to a place where nobody's actually able to profitably sell products online, which gives the opportunity for us, a smaller company, to come through and try and make some disruption happen.
How does an agency overcome that? How does an agency overcome that maybe it's laziness, it's complacency. It's just like I don't want to be bothered. Like we all know how that feels. Like, this is how we do things. It took a lot of work to figure out how we do things. We've been to conferences and we have our slide decks and we have our clients and things seem to be going okay. Like, what's really the compelling argument to break out of that mold and try new things that are difficult, that likely will fail in the beginning, that will likely take a lot more time? It's unclear what incentives sort of wait on the other end of that journey. What did it for you? What did it for us? What did it for our business?
I think it has to come from the top down. I think it has to come from a true commitment from the leadership to not just embrace change. In this case, it's embracing automation, right? But whatever your industry is, I think it's not just like you have to go all in, and you have to be willing to make the short-term sacrifices to be able to do that. We've put in a lot of policies, I guess not like real true policies, but we've put in a lot of guidelines over the years with what kind of clients we bring on, how we manage clients, how we manage campaigns that are hard decisions because it's easier to take a different route. And we've received pushback from our team. We have a lot of people that work here that in the moment, they want to be able to appease a client. And we're saying, no, we have to go a different route. And that's an uncomfortable conversation, but that's the directive that has to come from leadership. I think that's the only way to drive change. But what do you think?
I agree with you. I think there needs to be a culture of change. And I remember a quote about changing one's mind that I sent to you and Ari in an email, which outlined an opinion I had about something, which also clearly contradicted an opinion I had about the same thing 48 hours prior. So Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines." So his point is that only small-minded individuals
can understand what that quote means.
Refuse to rethink their prior beliefs or changing their mind. So I think changing one's mind is admirable. Mm-hmm. There's a culture that changing your mind is a sign of weakness. And they say one of the most amazing, outstanding things about Amazon was they maintained this culture of change, like disproportionately to how big of a business that they became. And it was rare, if not without precedent, to have a company of that size to have that culture of change. Like, well, let's do something differently. We'll try this. It'll fail. Change opinions about things. So I think it's true. I think it's a culture of change that small businesses need to conscientiously inculcate. And it does come from the top. Mm-hmm. It's like if you have a boss or there's leadership that have a decision and they can't admit it was wrong, or they can't see the faults in it, or an opinion or a strategy, and then quickly change it and be like, it's not embarrassing. It's nothing to be insecure about. To me, it's just the opposite. Like nothing shows confidence in being totally open and willing and quick to completely change your mind and be like, yeah, I said this yesterday. You're right. Because you see people getting into this argument all the time. It's like, you said that. No, I didn't really say that. I didn't really mean that. It's like, no, you misheard me. Prove it. I never said it. Show it to me. It's like, yeah, of course I said that. Yeah, and I'm saying something totally different now because I've been alive longer. I read something. I have a richer opinion on the topic. And that's an attitude, I think, which should be encouraged from the top down in a company, where change and looking for opportunities to change is something which is met with excitement, not as a deficiency. Something to be treated as an ideal, not as, a worst case scenario.
Right, but you also have to recognize that change, like anything in change, is going to be harder than the alternative. And that's the scary thing, I think. People like the idea of change. People like the idea of failing, right? There's a lot of we've talked about this. There's this failure pride that startups have. But ultimately, these types of things are really hard. And you have to have a long-term type of mindset when you go into it. So how do you combat that?
With a recent client, they asked for an audit. They're spending $80,000 a month on Google. They asked for an audit. And they were getting pitched by a number of agencies. And I looked at their account and I saw that like 95% of their search terms were branded. So I wrote them an email. And like, this was the first time I ever tried to win an account. And it was like a pretty large account for us without an actual deck. And I sent an email. It's like, my insight is I have nothing to audit. Like, you guys think that you have something to audit here? You're at ground zero. There's nothing to talk about. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
how'd that go?
We got the business. It was a thoughtful email, and I showed them why I couldn't give them an audit.
I was kind of hoping you said you didn't win the business, to be totally honest.
I know, that would drive the point home. But then I went on to explain like how we would strategically go about this, like what we're going to be thinking about, what our process looks like, why I think we're the best team for the job. I gave them some insights that I had as far as their messaging and their overall, budget allocation across the performance channels that we manage. And that was that. And they probably got a lot of technical audits of like, oh, this keyword opportunity, put this negative keyword in, change this bid, add the broad match modifier here. But I think I just maybe not unconventionally cut to the heart of the matter. But you also have to, if you're going to defy, like one of the rules with web design is if you're going to defy a convention, you just have to you have to have a really good reason to do so. Like, not just because you think it looks.
It has to be better.
It has to be better. So to me, I made the judgment call, and the judgment call was I think that this was going to be a more resonant message to the prospect, like that I have nothing to audit. We're starting from ground zero. We have a whole stretch of highway ahead of us, nothing but blue skies. So let's go. And that was the message I wanted to send, as opposed to an audit that I knew was going to be dry and something that won't be degrees better than any other audit that they were going to get. So yeah, it's to answer your question, it's a hard line to draw, but I would say the guiding principle would be, if you're going to change, you should be able to explain and understand, or at least feel strongly in your own heart that this is right, that this is better. It's an attitude that has to be tempered with humanity. But you're right. Like, I think it's true that the feeling, the antidote to that, going back to the beginning, which is complacency, is a feeling of divine, eternal discontent. My work could be better. My business could be better. I could be better. And I think when looked at in the right way, that feeling could be a true source of inspiration and positive emotion, as opposed to negative emotion and a downward spiral, which it sometimes could become also. So that's it for today. Let's pause. It's a lot of stuff to talk about and to open up and to continue with. You've been listening to the How to Hide a Dead Body podcast. Once again, pick up your copy of Join or Die, Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation, in hardcover on Amazon.com, written by Patrick Gilbert. And last question, as we inaugurate, is inaugurate a word? As we inaugurate our podcast studio, it's coming along with our Sennheiser products. That's not a paid promotion. Sennheiser is our proud client. What's the best place to hide a dead body?
Well, prior to today, I would have said in the back room of our office that had just been like a storage closet. But now that we've made it into this beautiful podcast studio, I can confidently say that it's on the second page of Google.
Very nice. We'll see you guys in the next episode.